Rain fell hard on the stone steps as the woman at the door smiled a cold smile and turned her key. The big wooden doors shut right in my face. My wedding dress was already soaked through. My hair was falling down. I had planned this day for 2 whole years, and now I stood outside in the mud like I did not matter at all. I banged on the door with both hands, but no one came. Then I heard something new, not thunder, not rain. It was the sound of many feet marching, all at once, like an army. Big black cars rolled up the wet road behind me, one after another after another. Doors opened. Men in dark suits stepped out, moving fast, moving like they owned the whole street. And then I saw him, my husband-to-be, the man I thought was just a quiet history teacher. He was not walking like a quiet man anymore. He was walking like a king. My name is Hannah Reed, and on the morning of my wedding, I woke up feeling like the happiest woman in the whole world. The sun was just coming up, and soft gold light was coming through the curtains of the small guest room at Ashworth Manor. This was the place I had dreamed about since I was a little girl. It had tall white pillars in the front, green grass all around it, and old trees that had been standing there for over 100 years. I remember lying in bed for just a few seconds, not moving, just smiling at the ceiling. Today I was going to marry Adrian, the kindest man I had ever met in my whole life. My best friend Jenna knocked on the door and came in holding 2 cups of coffee and a huge smile on her face. She sat next to me on the bed and said, "Today is the day, Hannah. Today you become Mrs. Reed." I laughed and told her I still could not believe it. We had been planning this wedding for almost 2 years. Every single detail had been chosen with so much love. The flowers were soft white roses mixed with small green leaves. The colors were simple, cream and gold, nothing too fancy, because that is who I am. I am not a fancy woman. I grew up with very little money. My mother raised me alone after my father passed away when I was only 9 years old. She worked 2 jobs just to keep food on our table, and she taught me that hard work and kindness matter more than money ever could. So when I met Adrian 3 years ago in a small coffee shop near the library where I worked, I did not care that he wore the same old brown coat every single day. I did not care that he always counted his coins carefully before buying his coffee. I loved him because he was gentle. He was smart. He remembered small things I said, like my favorite flower or the name of my childhood dog. He worked as a history teacher and also spent some of his time helping out at an old museum, cleaning and studying old paintings and old letters. He told me once that his family used to be wealthy a long time ago, many generations back, but that the money was gone now, spent by people before him who made bad choices. I believed him completely. Why would I not? He never asked me for money. In fact, it was the opposite. When it came time to plan our wedding, I was the one who paid for almost everything because I loved him and because I wanted us to start our life together without any debt hanging over him. I had been saving money since I was 20 years old, working extra hours at the library, taking small jobs on weekends, cutting my own spending so that one day I could have exactly the wedding I dreamed about. And Ashworth Manor, with its tall pillars and old gardens, was the most beautiful place I had ever seen. 18 months ago, I signed the contract myself. I paid the full amount myself. I still remember holding that signed paper in my hands and feeling so proud of myself. Jenna helped me into my dress that morning. It was a simple, elegant gown, soft white lace on the top, and a long, flowing skirt at the bottom. Nothing too big, nothing too shiny, just simple and beautiful like me. My mother had passed away 2 years earlier, so it was just Jenna and me getting ready in that little room, laughing about old memories, crying a little bit too because I missed my mother so much on this important day. Jenna pinned small white flowers into my hair and told me I looked like an angel. I looked in the mirror, and for a moment I almost did not recognize myself. I looked calm. I looked happy. I looked ready. We had 2 hours before the ceremony was supposed to begin, so we decided to walk down to the front entrance of the manor to check that everything was being set up properly. That is when everything started to go wrong. As we walked down the long stone path toward the front doors, I noticed something strange. There were no flowers by the entrance yet. There was no music playing. There was no one setting up chairs in the garden. My stomach started to feel tight and uncomfortable. I told Jenna maybe we were just early, but deep inside I knew something was not right. When we reached the big wooden doors, a woman I did not know was standing there. She wore a sharp green suit, and her hair was pulled back tightly. She looked at me the way someone looks at a bug on the floor. I asked her who she was, and she said her name was Margaret, and that she was the new manager of the estate. New manager, I said, confused, because I had been working with the same woman for 18 months. Margaret gave a small, cold laugh and told me there had been a change. She said the estate had been sold to a new owner, and the new owner had different plans for today. My heart started pounding. I told her I had a contract. I told her I had paid in full. I told her my guests were already arriving at the front gates. Margaret did not even blink. She said in a calm and icy voice that security would be redirecting my guests to a small pub down the road. Then she looked at my dress and said, "I suggest you take off that dress before it gets ruined, because you have 10 minutes before these men here escort you off the property." I felt like all the air had left my lungs. I screamed at her that this was illegal, that she could not do this to me, but she just turned her back on me like I was nothing at all. Big men in black jackets stepped forward, standing close, waiting for their orders. Rain began to fall harder, soaking through my dress in seconds, ruining hours and hours of work that Jenna had done on my hair. I stood there in shock, my whole body shaking, not from the cold, but from the pure unfairness of what was happening to me. That is when a woman's voice called out from a balcony high above us. I looked up and saw a beautiful woman standing there, holding a glass of what looked like my own wedding champagne. She smiled down at us with a mean, twisted little smile. "Have a lovely life," she called out, waving her hand like she was shooing away a fly. Margaret slammed the big iron gate shut in front of us with a loud metal clang. I collapsed onto a cold, wet stone bench near the road. Put my face into my soaked hands, and cried harder than I had ever cried before in my whole life. Jenna wrapped her arms around me, trying to keep me warm, whispering that everything would be okay, even though neither of us believed it in that moment. While I sat there crying in the rain, Jenna, always the strong one, walked back toward the gate to try to understand what had happened. Through the bars, she could see into the entrance hall, and what she saw made her come running back to me, her eyes wide with shock. She told me there was a woman inside, ordering everyone around like she owned the whole world. Her name, apparently, was Vivian. Jenna had heard someone say that Vivian's family was one of the richest families in the entire country, and that Vivian had walked into Ashworth Manor that very morning and offered the venue 5 times more money than my own contract was worth, all so she could get married there today instead of me. The manor had said yes to the higher offer without even telling me, and just like that, my wedding, the one I had saved for since I was 20 years old, was gone in a single moment because someone with more money wanted my spot. I felt sick. I felt small. I felt like all my years of hard work meant absolutely nothing next to someone else's bank account. I kept asking myself, over and over, how could they do this to me? How could money simply erase 18 months of planning like it was nothing at all? While we sat there, soaked and freezing, a small black car came speeding up the road, its tires splashing through the puddles. The door flew open, and Adrian stepped out. He was still wearing his simple gray suit from earlier that morning, his hair a little messy from running, worry written all over his face. But when he saw me sitting there, soaking wet, my makeup running down my cheeks, he did not panic the way I expected him to. He did not yell. He did not ask 100 fast questions. Instead, he stopped walking completely still for just a moment like he was collecting himself. Then he walked toward me slowly, knelt down in front of me on the wet gravel, and gently took my shaking hands into his. He asked me softly what happened, and I told him everything through my tears. I watched his face change as I spoke. His jaw tightened. His eyes, usually so soft and warm, became sharp and serious, almost like a completely different person was looking back at me. Adrian stood up slowly and turned to face the locked iron gate. He pulled out his phone, and in a calm, quiet voice, he said only a few words into it. I could not hear everything he said, but I remember one sentence clearly. He said, "Tell them it is time." I asked him who he was calling, my voice still shaking from the cold and the shock. He turned back to me, and for the first time in 3 years, I saw something in his eyes I had never seen before. Not anger, not sadness, something like calm, quiet power. He took a deep breath and said, "Hannah, there is something I have never told you, and I am sorry it has to come out this way. My full name is Adrian Calvin. I am from the House of Calvin. My family ruled a small kingdom many generations ago, and even though that kingdom does not exist as a country anymore, our family still holds great wealth, old land, and powerful connections all across the world. I hid this from you because I wanted someone to love me for exactly who I am, not for money, not for a title, not for anything that comes with my family name. When you paid for this wedding with your own hard-earned money, when you worked extra hours just to give us something beautiful, you showed me you loved the real me. That is something no amount of gold could ever buy. I stared at him, completely speechless, rain still falling all around us. Before I could even find words to respond, the sound of engines grew louder and louder down the road. Then I saw them, one black car after another, at least 20 of them, rolling slowly up the long driveway like a wave of dark water. The doors opened all at once, and out stepped rows of serious men in sharp black suits, moving with quiet, powerful discipline, like soldiers who had trained their whole lives for exactly this moment. A tall man with silver hair stepped forward and stood beside Adrian. Adrian looked at him and said only one sentence. My family's holding company will be taking control of this estate effective immediately. The tall, silver-haired man, who I would later learn was called Commander Hale, gave a sharp nod and turned to his men. Within minutes, the iron gates that had been locked in my face were pulled open again, this time by Adrian's own people. We walked back through the same path where I had been thrown out just half an hour earlier, but everything felt different now. My legs were shaking, partly from the cold, partly from everything happening so fast. Inside the entrance hall, chaos was still going on. Vivian was standing on top of a soft velvet chair, screaming at a poor caterer, her expensive jewelry flashing under the bright lights. My careful, simple flower arrangements had been thrown carelessly to one side, replaced with huge, loud, purple flowers that did not match anything I had chosen. When the armed men walked in, everyone froze. Vivian turned around, her face twisting into an angry, ugly expression. She shouted, "Excuse me, what is the meaning of this? Get these ridiculous costume soldiers out of here immediately, or my father will buy this whole town and fire every single person in it." Adrian stepped forward slowly, leaving me safe by the door with Jenna. His whole body looked different now, standing tall, calm, powerful, like a completely different man than the quiet history teacher I had fallen in love with 3 years ago. Vivian looked him up and down and asked, sharply, who exactly he thought he was. Adrian answered in a calm, cold voice that echoed through the entire hall. "I am the man whose bride you just insulted in front of everyone," he said. "And as of exactly 4 minutes ago, my family's company has taken full control of this property. You are currently trespassing on private land that belongs to me. You have exactly 3 minutes to leave this room." Vivian's face turned pale, but she tried to act tough, wobbling forward in her tall high heels, pointing her finger angrily. "You cannot do this," she shouted. "I gave £3 million to this estate, and I will make sure every single penny of that money is investigated as proof of corruption and unfair business practice," Adrian said calmly, waving his hand toward Commander Hale. "Escort them out, all of them, and make sure Miss Vivian and her guests leave through the back service door, in the mud, exactly the way they forced my bride to leave earlier today." The panic that followed was something I will never forget as long as I live. Rich, spoiled guests who had been laughing and drinking champagne moments earlier were suddenly being walked out through a muddy back exit, their expensive shoes sinking into wet dirt, their proud faces now filled with shock and embarrassment. Vivian screamed the entire way, but no one listened to her anymore. I mean Margaret, the woman who had locked the door in my face, stood frozen near the entrance, her whole body trembling with fear. Adrian walked slowly toward her, and even though his voice stayed calm, there was something in his tone that made the whole room go silent. "You made my bride stand in the freezing rain," he said quietly. "You laughed while she cried." Margaret began to cry, apologizing over and over, but Adrian simply turned his back on her, refusing to even look at her again. Within about 10 minutes, the huge halls of the manor had been completely cleared of every single unwanted guest. The only sound left was soft rain tapping gently against the tall glass windows. Adrian turned back toward me, and the cold, powerful expression on his face melted away instantly, replaced by the same gentle, loving man who used to pay for my coffee because he said his budget was tight. He walked over to me, still standing there shaking in my soaked dress, and gently took my face into his warm hands. "I am so sorry you had to go through that," he whispered. "But I promise you, this day is not ruined. This day is only just beginning. Before we continue with the rest of Hannah's story, if you are enjoying this so far, please take just 2 seconds to like this video and hit that subscribe button. It truly helps our small channel grow, and it means the world to us. Now, let us get back to the story. Adrian's men worked like magic. Within 20 minutes, the same soldiers who had marched in looking so serious were now carefully carrying fresh chairs, setting up soft white tablecloths, and gently placing new flowers exactly where my old ones had been thrown aside. Vivian's ugly purple flowers were tossed straight into the outdoor trash bins, and my own soft white roses and green leaves were carefully found, cleaned, and rearranged with even more care than before. A team of chefs, who I later learned were flown in from one of the finest kitchens in the country, arrived to finish a delicious 6-course meal that had already been planned. Commander Hale personally walked up to me and gave a small, respectful bow. "Your Grace," he said gently, using words I had never heard used about myself before in my life. "Your guests have all been found and brought back safely. The musicians are ready. His Highness is waiting for you at the altar." I looked at Jenna, completely stunned, and she squeezed my hand tightly, tears of joy now filling her eyes instead of the tears of anger from earlier. We hurried back to the small guest room, where a team of kind hair and makeup artists were already waiting, ready to fix everything the rain had ruined. Within 1 hour, my hair was perfect again, my makeup was fresh, and I had changed into a backup gown that Jenna had packed, just in case anything went wrong on the big day. As I stood at the very top of the grand staircase, holding a fresh bouquet of soft white flowers, my heart was pounding so hard I thought everyone in the room could hear it. I took a deep breath and slowly walked down the long marble staircase, the same one Vivian had been standing near just 1 hour earlier, screaming at frightened workers. Now, instead of chaos, there was soft music playing, and rows of my family and friends, along with new faces from Adrian's world, all turning to look at me with warm, happy smiles. Waiting for me at the end of the long aisle was Adrian, now dressed in a beautifully fitted deep blue suit that I had never seen before in my life. The powerful, serious look he had worn earlier had completely disappeared, replaced by something soft and vulnerable, like a little boy seeing his favorite thing in the whole world. He was not the powerful Duke of Calvin in that moment. He was simply my Adrian. Walking toward him felt like floating on air. I imagined my mother walking beside me, so proud, and I imagined my father too, even though I barely remembered his face. I felt him there with me somehow. When I finally reached Adrian, he took both of my hands into his and whispered, very softly, so only I could hear, "Thank you for loving me before you ever knew I was a duke. I promised to spend my whole life proving I deserve you." The ceremony itself felt like something out of a beautiful dream. The rain outside had softened into a gentle mist, and warm golden light began breaking through the clouds, streaming through the tall glass windows of the great hall. The person leading the ceremony spoke gently about love, about loyalty, and about how true love does not care about money or titles, it only cares about kindness and honesty. When it was time for us to say our vows, Adrian spoke first. He said that he had spent his whole life surrounded by people who only wanted his money or his family name, and that meeting me, a woman who worked hard for everything she had, who never once asked him for anything, taught him what real love actually felt like. He said that watching me cry in the rain earlier that day broke his heart, but that watching me stand back up, with strength and dignity, made him fall in love with me even more deeply than before. My own vows were shaky, my voice trembling with emotion, but I told him that I did not marry a duke today. I married a kind, gentle man who remembered my favorite flower and my childhood dog's name, and that no title or crown could ever mean more to me than the small, quiet love he had shown me every single day for 3 years. When we were finally announced as husband and wife, the entire room erupted into loud, joyful applause, and even some of the strong, serious guards standing near the walls were smiling. The reception that followed was more beautiful than anything I could have ever imagined on my own. String music played softly while we ate the finest meal I had ever tasted in my whole life, 6 full courses, each one more delicious than the last. My old, simple, cream and gold decorations blended perfectly with a few new touches Adrian's team had added. Golden lights strung gently across the ceiling, soft candles glowing on every table. Jenna gave a speech that made the whole room laugh and cry at the same time, telling everyone about the very first day she met Adrian, back when we all thought he was just a broke history teacher who counted his coins carefully before buying coffee. Everyone laughed warmly, and Adrian laughed the loudest of all, admitting it was true. He really had been counting every coin, not because he needed to, but because he wanted to know what it truly felt like to live a simple, honest life, at least for a little while. As the night went on, Adrian took my hand and led me outside onto a soft, grassy area behind the manor, where the sky had cleared completely, showing thousands of bright stars above us. He told me that tomorrow, life would look very different. There would be more attention, more responsibilities, more people watching us. But he promised me that no matter how big our life became, he would always remember the small, quiet moments, drinking coffee together in that tiny shop, walking hand in hand through the park, and me choosing to pay for our wedding myself, simply because I loved him. In the weeks that followed our wedding, news of what happened at Ashworth Manor spread quickly. Margaret, the cold-hearted manager who had locked me out in the rain, was fired from her job within days, once the full story came out publicly. No other respectable venue in the entire country would hire her again after word got around about how she had treated a paying bride simply because someone offered more money. Vivian, the rich woman who had tried to buy my wedding day for herself, faced her own consequences too. Her father, embarrassed by the public attention and the legal questions raised about how the venue deal was made, quietly ended his daughter's access to certain family accounts for a while, forcing her, for possibly the first time in her entire life, to actually face the real consequences of her own selfish actions. As for me and Adrian, we chose not to spend our time being angry or bitter about what had happened. Instead, we used a portion of Adrian's family wealth to create a small fund that helps young brides and grooms who cannot afford their dream wedding, giving them the kind of beautiful day I once thought I had lost forever. Every single year on our wedding anniversary, we returned to Ashworth Manor, not as guests, but as the true owners of that beautiful old estate, and we walked through the same gardens where I once sat crying in the freezing rain, grateful for how far we have come. Looking back now, I understand something I did not understand on that rainy morning. Sometimes life takes away something we love, only to give us something even greater in return. If Margaret had never locked that door, if Vivian had never tried to steal my wedding day, I may have never truly seen the full strength of the man I married, or the depth of his love for me. True love, I learned, is never about money or titles or how big your bank account is. It is about who stands beside you when everything seems to be falling apart, and who chooses to protect you, no matter the cost. To every single person watching this video right now, especially if you have ever felt small or unseen, or like the world has counted you out, please remember this. Your quiet hard work matters. Your kindness matters. And sometimes, the very people who try to knock you down the hardest are simply setting the stage for your greatest, most beautiful comeback. Closing, thank you so much for watching this story all the way to the end. It truly means everything to us. If this story touched your heart even a little bit, please give this video a big thumbs up. And if you have not already, please subscribe to our channel so you never miss any of our upcoming stories.